Hey, the more Mike, the better. This week on the Baron Oil shows, we have Mike Grell and Mike Baron.
And Jeff is changing his name legally to Mike tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I should say this. Not that anybody really cares, but I told Mike the other day I had blood work done about a week ago, and I met this guy who had his name, who was really, he's about 20, I think he's like 21, and he just had his name legally changed to Badger. So I just thought that was. But if the place wasn't so busy, I was actually going to try to like FaceTime or something with Mike and let him meet him. But the place was slammed and with a lot of sick people, and I'm like, I don't want to hang around here. So
good.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, it was. And honestly, like I think he got rid of his last name too. I think he's just Badger.
Just Badger.
But
wow.
Yeah. So is there anybody named just Sable out there, or?
There's I met a fellow a few years back, showed me a picture of his new baby boy. His name was Jim Morgan. He named his son Travis.
Oh, nice.
Yep. There's a lady wrestler goes by the name of Sable.
Sable,
but,
yeah, that's true. Yep. That's cool.
Can't tell you how many Olivers I've met in the last
I'm sure
10 years.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's awesome. So have you and Mike met before at a convention or something?
Oh yeah.
I figured.
Oh yeah. We've known each other since I don't know. I was skinny and I had hair.
I was going to say the first comic days or before first comics.
The first comics days.
The first comics,
yeah.
Mike Grell is well known to comic readers. He's the creator of Maggie the Cat, John Sable Freelance, Warlord, many other titles. Many people don't know that Mike is a Vietnam War veteran. He served 4 years in the Air Force. He studied illustration at the University of Wisconsin in Green Bay. So one time he was a cheesehead, and he's been stepping in and out of Wisconsin for years, so sometimes a cheesehead, sometimes not. But Mike has left his mark on so many titles, especially at DC, when he revolutionized Green Arrow and brought to it a previously unknown realism because of his familiarity with actual weapons. And I think Mike created Green Arrow, the Longbow Hunters. And what many people don't know is that Mike is himself an accomplished big game hunter and has gone on safari in Africa. Although whether to take pictures or take shots, I don't know.
Probably a little of both.
If you can't eat it, what's the point?
Well, I remember you telling me you were chasing some animal through the brush for hours.
It was the Cape Buffalo. It was my second safari. I was in the Zambezi Valley, and the method for hunting buffalo is to get on the track of a herd and you follow them. If they run, you run. If they walk, you walk. When they stop, you get down and crawl and try to make a stalk and get as close as you can. And we had found a herd with a massive bull in it, and cut the track at 7:30 in the morning, and we ran on that track until 11 o'clock before we caught the herd.
Wow!
But that was a long time ago.
Why don't you tell us how you broke into comics?
I got phenomenally lucky. I had been at the 1973 Comic-Con, Phil Seuling's old show in New York. And while I was there, Saul Harrison from DC Comics was reviewing portfolios, and I left a portfolio with him. And as I was turning away, an older gentleman, and by older I mean the guy was creaky. He had to have been like 20 years younger than I am right now. he stopped me and asked me to take a look at what I had in my bag. And what he did, he told me in no uncertain terms to get my carcass up to Julie Schwartz's office. And I asked if I could tell him who sent me, and he said, tell him Irv. It turned out to be Irv Novick, who was the Batman artist at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I walked in with the prepared encyclopedia salesman speech that goes, good afternoon, Mr. Schwartz. Can I interest you in this Lux 37-volume set of Encyclopedia Britannica, complete with annual yearbook and calendar? And if you get interrupted anywhere along the line, you have to go all the way back to good afternoon, Mr. Schwartz.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how far I got. Good afternoon, Mr. Schwartz. And Julie said, what the hell makes you think you can draw comics? And I unzipped my portfolio, put it on his desk. I said, take a look and you tell me. And you flip through it, called Joe Orlando in from the office next door. They put their heads together, and I walked out half an hour later with a script. It was Adventure 435, a Aquaman backup story. And from there, I had just delivered my first story and picked up another script from Joe. And as I got home, the phone was ringing, and Joe Orlando said, Murray Boltonoff doesn't know it, but Dave Cockrum just walked off the Legion of Superheroes. And if he wanted to know if I could handle a monthly book, and would I mind if he recommended me for the job? And I said, sure. So Murray gave me a 7-page story to ink over Dave's pencils. And when I turned it in, he said, well, I've got good news and bad news. I said, well, what's the good news? He said, you got the job. I said, well, what's the bad news? He said, you can expect to get hate mail. I said, I haven't even done anything yet.
Yep.
He said, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
For starters, you're replacing the most popular artist we ever had on the book. And to top things off, we're going to kill off one of the fans' favorite characters in your first issue. And he was right. You know, the mail all was on the order of Grell, you suck. Bring back Dave. But that was it. And I was off and running.
Who wrote those scripts that the Legion of Superhero scripts?
Terry Bates at first, and then Jim Shooter.
Did that help you, I guess, getting that hate mail early to kind of start developing a thick skin for later?
I learned not to read the fan letters.
Yeah.
For sure.
We were all lucky that the internet hadn't been invented in those days.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. Yep, that's for sure.
Yeah, because even if you don't read it, somebody else will read it and the worst stuff and tell you.
Yep. You can run, but you can't hide. From there, I was doing a lot of backup stories. Did Green Lantern and Green Arrow separately. The Atom was one. Trying to think what else. Can't really recall all the little minor jobs that I did.
Right.
My one story that I did was I think it was called The Alien Among Us. It was a science fiction monster something or other, and I think it was might have been my second assignment. And Joe Orlando, who really helped out in those days for any young guy coming along, he would give them inventory stuff to do. If he couldn't publish it right away, he'd keep them working, give them inventory stuff, and that one went into the desk drawer for 2 solid years before he pulled it out and published it in Weird War Tales. And I was appalled. Joe, please just don't publish this. It's so terrible. And he says, no, I'm publishing your second story and Howard Chaykin's first story in the same issue. And we're going to give you guys name credit on the cover. That's never happened before. We're both going, please don't publish that crap. But nope, name credit on the cover. So there it was. Sometimes you just have to shake your head and grin and bear it. Nothing else you can do. Then at that time, right around that time, Atlas Comics came into the picture. That Atlas was offering creator ownership and $100 a page. And so I took my portfolio over there and showed them what I had in my bag when I first went out to New York, which was a comic strip called Savage Empire. And it was about an archaeologist who falls through a time warp and winds up in Atlantis. So I pitched the editor on it, and he was really interested. He said, yeah, we want to do this for sure. And I said, well, do me a favor. I have commitments at DC. Let me get 2 issues in the bag before you make an announcement, because I wanted to fulfill my commitments at DC and be ahead of the game. He said, sure, no problem. Well, I walked from their office to DC, which was about 20 minutes across town at the time. And Carmine Infantino was waiting for me in the lobby. It seems that the editor had picked up the phone as I walked out the door to brag to Carmine that he had me locked up. So Carmine said, why didn't you bring it to us? And I said, you guys haven't had any luck with sword and sorcery type stuff at all. So number one, I didn't think you'd be interested. Number two, $100 a page in creator ownership, Yeah. And Carmine said, I can't give you creator ownership because DC doesn't do that. What I can give you is our top rate, which at that time was $62.50 a page, which was $20 a page more than I was getting at the time for pencils and inks. And he said, I'll give you a 1-year guarantee, which is more than you'll get from Atlas. He said, odds are they're only going to last about 6 months and they'll be gone. He was right on so many counts. Atlas evaporated in less than a year. And as far as the $100 a page goes and the creator ownership, that lasted for about 2 issues, and they dumped all the artists and replaced them with foreign artists who'd work for $25 a page.
Yeah. And
none of those guys wound up owning their own material. Atlas wound up owning the whole damn thing. So he said, why don't you give me the pitch? I'm walking into his office behind him, and his phone is ringing, and he excused himself for about 3 minutes on the phone call. And during that time, my brain activated and said, you dummy, if he buys this, you lose it. So in that 3-minute time period, I jettisoned the concept of an archaeologist in Atlantis and replaced him with an SR-71 spy pilot who falls through the opening at the North Pole and winds up in the world at the center of the earth. I just finished reading a book called The Hollow Earth, and it's all about the Hollow Earth theory. And excuse me,
it's okay.
You coughing up somewhat of a lung here. I'm just coming off COVID, recovering nicely. Thank you. That book spoke about how many different titles there had been, something like 87 different titles related to the Hollow Earth theory that were published before the turn of the 20th century, including Jules Verne, A Journey to the Center of the Earth, and going on from there, the Edgar Rice Burroughs Pellucidar series. And so it was at least fair enough public domain that I could draw on all of that. A Journey to the Center of the Earth was my favorite book as a kid. I read it like 8 times in high school and saw the movie every time it would come around. I think my last count that where I lost track of it was about 23 times I've seen that movie.
The
All
Pat
of that
Boone movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Pat Boone is in it. Yes. James Mason is the principal star.
Come here, duck. Come here, duck.
Yep. And viaduct. I don't know. Viaduct. All of that went into the jumble. I pulled stuff out of my hat, out of various bodily orifices, and threw it all together. I changed all the names of the characters except the villain, Demos. I still can't think of a better villain name than Demos. Carmine said, pitch this to Joe Orlando, and if he likes it, I'll give you a 1-year run. So I pitched Joe, and Joe actually had me kind of stumped there for a second. He said, what's this guy's name? Because I hadn't thought of a new name for him, the character. In Savage Empire, it's Jason Cord. And I said, Morgan. He said, Morgan, what? I said, like Henry Morgan, the pirate. He goes, okay, so what's his first name? I said, Morgan, Henry Morgan. It's got to be Henry Morgan. He said, no, there's 2 actors using that name. It's Henry Morgan and Harry Morgan at the time. My older brother had just had a baby boy and they named him Travis. And so I came up with Travis Morgan. And he goes, Travis. I said, yeah, like the Alamo. He went, oh, yeah, that could work. So as luck would have it, the names for the places, Skartaris is named for the mountain peak in Journey to the Center of the Earth that points the way. The shadow of the mountain peak shines down into the volcanic crater and points the way, the channel that they take to descend to the center of the earth. Shambhala, 3 Dog Night.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does your light shine on the road to Shambhala? Well, Shambhala is the golden city in Tibet, supposedly buried in the mountains someplace. And all of that stuff just gelled, came together, and I had a ball doing it. I was a little appalled when I picked up the lettered pages for the issue number 3, and turned to the last page, and I read the end, and I went to Joe and I said, "This is wrong. You're supposed to say next issue and the title." And Joe said, Carmine canceled the book. I said, he can't do that. He promised me a 1-year run. And Joe said, he lied. He does that. And that was it for about 2 whole weeks before Jeanette Kahn walked in and canceled Carmine Infantino. It turned out that the Warlord was her favorite comic in the line. And when she looked at the publishing schedule, she said, "Where's the Warlord?" And he said, "They said, well, Carmine canceled it." She said, "Carmine's not here anymore. Put it back." And that that made a whole career for me right there. When the DC implosion hit, everything that wasn't canceled became a monthly book instead of a bi-monthly. And that's how the Warlord picked up and went to a monthly book.
Where were you living at the time?
I started out in upstate New York, a little town called Brewster, about an hour north of the city. But as soon as I had a reputation for myself and steady work, I bolted back from my hometown in Wisconsin to a little dinky place about 100 miles north of Green Bay. Don't you know? So the cheesehead comes naturally. It's pretty much in the blood up there. A little town called Florence.
It's a little known fact that if you're born in Wisconsin, you're required by law to root for the Packers until you die.
Apparently so. Yeah. My family worships regularly at the Green Bay Packers shrine.
Yeah.
In the backyard. Pretty much. Talked to my brother one year during the hunting season, and he was desperate to get home in time for kickoff. I said, just because you're not there when they kick off doesn't mean that the Packers are jinxed and they're going to lose. And he said, you never know. Married a gal from Alabama, so I'm down here right now, and she went to Auburn, so around this house it's a War Eagle. And forget that Roll Tide stuff. Even though the Auburn team doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of luck, they have a lot of support around here. That's for sure. Yeah. But I have to say, Southeast Conference, the football down here is way better than NFL. I mean, these guys are really fantastic.
Yeah. So who came up with the Warlord name? Was that you or was that someone else?
That was me.
That's cool.
It was another one of those pull it out of the hat things. Yeah. There had been a Charlton Heston movie called The Warlord, but it was 2 words, The Warlord. Right. And that was in the back of my brain, and just combined it and went from there. When I moved back to Wisconsin, I'm in my studio working on an issue of the Warlord, and through the mail slot comes this big package from DC, and I had no idea what that could be in there. So I opened it up, and it was the portfolio that I had left with Saul Harrison of Savage Empire. And it came complete with a form letter rejection slip that said, "Dear artist, thank you for your submission. Unfortunately, it doesn't meet our current publishing needs. Best of luck, editorial staff, DC Comics," which was a real crack up because under the title The Warlord, it was their top selling title.
Right. Yeah. What came next after that within your career?
Green Lantern, Green Arrow.
Green Lantern, that's right.
Yeah. I happened to be in the offices when Denny O'Neil made the announcement that he was going to resurrect that title. And I went straight to his office and said, "Okay, who do I have to kill?" And he said, "If you want the job that bad, just put the gun down and it's yours." Not really, but
right, yeah.
To that effect. That was a stroke of luck because Green Lantern, Green Arrow was the title that got me interested in comics in the first place. I had been stationed in Saigon in 1970 when a fellow came from the States carrying a small stack of his favorite comic books. And in there was that run of Green Lantern, Green Arrow by Neil and Denny and Dick. And it blew my mind. I had gotten away from comics in my teens. I hung around long enough to get the early Marvel stuff, all that stuff under the bed in a box when I went off to college, and long since sold for scrap paper. Really, I had missed that whole evolution, the late 60s altogether. And it floored me that here were stories about real issues in the world today, and beautifully illustrated. And I decided right then and there that was the kind of work I wanted to do. Right place, right time. And, I'm really grateful for it. I forget how many issues I've done of that title, but most recently went back and did anniversary stories for both Green Arrow and Green Lantern and Green Arrow, which turned out to be Denny's last story. I remember reading the script, and when I came to that last panel and he had written the end, I knew he was trying to tell us something, and a few months later he was gone. Just like that.
Wow.
Life's short.
Yep.
Mike, how did you get involved with First Comics?
I had known Mike Gold from when he was doing PR for DC Comics, and he was also one of the co-founders of the Chicago Comic Con, and we always got along famously. And when he jumped ship from DC and became one of the founders of First Comics, he called me up and offered me carte blanche. Anything I wanted to do, any subject matter, just wanted me to write and draw a book for First. And so I came up with Sable for a number of reasons. One was that I was tired of doing superhero books. I just, muscle-bound guys in skin-tight suits had gotten old and boring for me. And I had another comic strip that I made an attempt at trying to sell once upon a time called Iron Mike, hard-boiled private detective kind of thing. And I took a few elements of that and combined it with the African background, made him a professional hunter. And the reason for that was to give myself something that I would be so interested in, it would bring out my best work. And I started doing stories that were grounded in reality, which I continued to do through my run on Green Arrow later on. And so I just wrote the kind of stories I've always written for an audience of one. I write for me. But it just happened to be lucky that I'm apparently in a wide demographic. It has a strong appeal to guys like me, and I had a great time on that book. It's one of the best things I've ever done.
Were you already doing hunting and everything before that, or did that come?
Oh yeah, where I grew up in northern Wisconsin during the Kennedy administration, they did an assessment of the 10 most depressed areas in the United States. My hometown was tied for first with Appalachia.
Wow.
There was no industry. The mines had closed down. There was just nothing. Fortunately, my dad was a lumberjack and was never really out of work. But in those days, if your dad didn't hunt, the family didn't eat meat, and that's all there was to it. My mom grew up in that kind of a lifestyle too. When the TV was on and you'd hear the theme song from the Waltons start, ba-da-da-da-da-da, from the other end of the house, you could hear my mom yell, "The Waltons were rich." Mom hunted, she was the one who taught us the fast way to skin a rabbit, things like that. And so I grew up running wild in the woods, really. A lot of times wearing a loincloth and yelling like Tarzan. And I hunted from the time I was able to. It's just part of the heritage and part of the lifestyle living in that era. Now, I will say that during the time that I was hunting, I once went 10 solid years without firing a single shot in the woods. Because just luck of the draw. But during that 10-year period, I had a squirrel come down a tree, sit in my arms, and eat a pine cone. I had my arms crossed with my rifle pointing up like this. He sat right there on top of my rifle and ate a pine cone. I had a whole flock of chickadees land on me one day. They were flitting from bush to bush as I was walking down a logging road, and I decided to just hold still and see how close they would come. And the next thing I know, I've got about 50 chickadees all over me. They were out the end of my gun barrel. I had one little guy landed on top of my hat. He hopped down in the back, and I feel him trucking around. He walks around to the front. Pretty soon I see feet grab hold of the brim of my hat, and he was like this, looking me right in the eye. I lost it. I laughed, and they just exploded and took off. I had a rabbit come hopping down a trail once. I was standing next to a tree in a patch of sun on a really cold, bitter morning, and he comes hopping down the trail right next to my leg. He stops, turns around, sits down facing the same direction I was, and leaned up against my leg to get warm. Like, we were just sitting there waiting for a deer to come along, and here comes this rabbit. Things like that. I had an urban phase weasel go under a hollow log where I was sitting, and hopped up, came back the log on top of the log next to me, and stood up about 3 feet away, looking around to see if there was anything to eat, and then off he went. I had a turkey try to land on me while I was in a tree stand once, and all of those experiences I never would have had if I hadn't been in the woods carrying a gun as an excuse. It's just, something that I really love, being in the outdoors, and being able to incorporate that kind of stuff in Sable, I think, was what really brought out the best in that book, best in me.
Yeah.
How many issues of Sable did you do?
I don't know.
You ran for years, right?
It ran for years. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I wrote and drew 57 before I left the book. And the reason I left was money dispute with First Comics. They were simply not paying the royalties that they were supposed to. And
royalties?
Yeah. At one point, they were almost $60,000 in the hole to me, and I realized that if I stayed with them, it was just encouraging that kind of bad behavior. The contract that I had for Sable and for Star Slayer said that it was for a 10-year period, or for 3 years after they stopped publication. And I knew that if I left the book, the publication would fall apart in fairly short order. And I was right. Once I was gone, they handed it off to a couple of different artists. Dennis Cowan was one. Dennis was terrific artist. I mean, just an amazing artist and a great guy. But without my imprint on the book, without my personal hand, it fell on hard times, and they stopped publication, and 3 years later I got the rights back.
A lot of people don't know that there was a Sable television program.
Yes, there was, ever so briefly. It lasted, well, I think the second episode was on when the phone rang and the network canceled it, and for very good reason. My concept on Sable was that he's a reverse of Batman. No secret identity, none of this by day the mild-mannered fill in the blank, by night the dark avenger. So they reversed my reverse and made it exactly like Batman. By day the mild-mannered children's author living with a secret identity, and by night the dark avenger. And it's like, no, guys, you don't understand. They did a test audience. Demographically, it was ranked number one, in the 18 to 35-year-old male market. So when did they put it on? 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Guess where your whole demographic is? They're not sitting home watching TV. We started off selling Coors beer and Dodge Ram four-wheel drives. And 2 weeks later, we were selling Calgon and Ritz crackers. It was just terrible. They tried to revise the show with the fourth episode, and it just didn't come off. But Renee Russo made her acting debut in that series, played Eden Kendall, and so did Laura Flynn Boyle.
Oh, wow.
I didn't realize that until years later. Somebody pointed it out. She played a little girl who was kidnapped in the pilot episode.
Has there been any other interest or anything in any of your other properties?
Oh yeah, there has been quite a bit over the years. I had an option for a Sable film in 2000, and unfortunately there was a SAG strike,
right?
Pretty much scheduled. Everybody assumed that the contract wasn't going to go through, and so in order to get into production, it would have to be greenlit by March 15th. And they took a look at the screenplay, and they felt that it was about 90% there, but they wanted to do some tweaking, and rather than rush into production, they figured we'll just hold off and start shooting in October, which would have been ideal for the nature of the story. Unfortunately, 9/11 happened, and when the Twin Towers came down, the producers lost all their foreign capitalization. And got the rights back in turnaround. It actually is being looked at seriously right now. Streaming services are just dying for content at the moment. I've written a screenplay that is getting some play, and have high hopes for it. Maggie the Cat as well. Maggie was a spin-off character from the Sable series. She showed up in I think issue number 16. And she's basically a lady cat burglar, but she was always one jump ahead of Sable. I always like the idea that the hero who's been invincible winds up getting his ass kicked by a woman. It's just just about the time when he's been established and everybody's settling in, and they just automatically assume that he's going to be able to overcome all adversity and come out on top. No, she's a jump ahead of him, and always winds up the winner. I revised that character and give her a new backstory where she is the widow of a landed British gentry type. He's got a title of Lord Grimalkin, and so that makes her Lady Margaret. And what I was going for was the idea that she marries this guy thinking she'd have sort of a Princess Grace kind of life, and instead she winds up more like Princess Diana or Meghan Markle, with the press hounding her to death, and a cheating, philandering husband who kills himself in a car wreck with his latest mistress, leaving her penniless except for a ramshackled ruin of a castle in Scotland, and a stone gatehouse that she's running as a bed and breakfast. And with the aid of her trusted butler, Angus McCallan, who's an old reprobate. He had been a stage magician who couldn't make it as a magician, so he started using his lockpicking skills to crack safes instead. and he's been training her in more ways than one. He's Higgins to her Eliza Doolittle. He's smoothing off the rough edges while he's training her to be the greatest cat burglar in the world. And unfortunately for her, British SAS gets wind of what she's up to, and they press her into service to help track down a terrorist mastermind, a creaky old guy who's a leftover Nazi from the Hitler Youth, who's now into his early 90s, and he's going to be dead soon, and he sees no reason why the rest of the world should outlive him. And so she's teamed up with a top British agent, an SAS asset, to ferret this guy out and bring him to justice once and for all before he can pull off his big shtick. We ran 2 issues of that before the industry collapsed. Recently went back and added, there you go, added more material to that 2-issue story, added another 15 pages that bridges the gap between the first and the second issue, and fills in continuity so it will match what's in my screenplay. And we're just getting ready to launch a new Kickstarter to fund the second volume of that, where the whole story will wrap up.
Did you ever do any novels on John Sable? Or
I did. I published a novel in '99, and I have a second one in the works that leapfrogs a good deal, brings it very much into the 21st century, and reveals some interesting stuff about his background and his family.
Cool.
I think you guys will like it.
Do you have a publisher?
On that second one, I'm going to self-publish to begin with.
Do you intend to continue that series if it works?
If it works, yeah, I will. I want to at least get that second book out, because there is a bit of a cliffhanger at the end. It's never a good idea to be absolutely definitive. Although in the first novel, I was quite happy to leave it where I did. I'm not going to tell you how that one ends, but it's a bit ambiguous. If I never did another story, I would be content with that story as a standalone, and you can read it and not feel like you're missing anything.
Mike actually had 2 successful Kickstarters with the Nexus novel and a Badger novel.
Yeah.
So, which which is tough to do. It's tough to do decent with a novel, but like if you have a character like John Sable or Nexus or Badger that people know, then yeah, definitely.
I would imagine writing a Nexus novel would be tougher than the Badger, because the Badger seems to me it's all in the character.
Yeah.
Sort of not stroking your ego, Mike, but Elmore Leonard type dialogue back and forth is, you can tell tons in dialogue, and Nexus seems to me that it would be more visual.
He went a little crazy with the Nexus novel. It's pretty.
What? Mike went crazy?
Mike went crazy. I know. It's not like him.
I have another one that's almost finished, and I just haven't been able to get to it because I'm so busy with other projects.
Yeah, he actually did. I mean, I haven't heard all of the responses, but he from what I had seen and read too, like he got a lot of people really liking it. So I know you had like a lot of us, you had trouble with your last Kickstarter and nightmares with the
Lordy,
everything. Because stuff we don't think about, like being able to have paper available for people to print on, and it's like,
who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, it's just
like, wait a minute, there's no paper.
Yeah.
or there is paper, but it's on the other side of the world,
Yeah.
and getting it from there to here.
Yeah.
You know, it's just I can't believe how many obstacles there turned out to be in something that you would think it would be just simple. Step one, step two, step
if they
three,
legalized
step four.
hemp, we wouldn't have this problem.
Why is that going to fix it?
Well, because hemp grows real fast, as opposed to a tree. I mean, you can plant a crop of hemp, and within a year, it's paper ready.
Oh, wow.
So you get a crop of you get paper every year from the same field.
Yes, but after you roll it up and smoke it, can you still print on it?
No.
Well, you get multiple uses out of it.
You can do a lot of hemp.
You could probably. Do you do toilet paper too, Mike, with hemp?
No, but I can do the socks.
Oh, okay. No, I
don't want to get into the image that just conjured up. Oh my God!
I'm not joking. I have hemp socks.
Yeah, I just picture you, pulling the sock over. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you had mentioned you were trying to get back on track with all that stuff. And I know you have the Mega the Cat thing going, but did you say that there's the John Sable freelance,
the omnibus?
The omnibus.
Yeah, yes, we finally have that going to the printer.
Yep.
Well, I think what we're seeing now in terms of film and television is that the guys who grew up reading comics are now in charge of stuff like that.
Yeah,
where you used to have to spend hours trying to educate someone on the how and the why and how this works and how it can be capitalized on down the road. You don't have to do that anymore. Everybody seems to get it.
Sometimes not. Dogs are agitating for dinner. They can just wait. They can just wait. The dogs will be fed. The dogs have never gone hungry.
They're probably trying to go to Mike Grell because of his animal magnetism he has.
Mike, are you doing continuity these days?
Yeah, I am. I've got the second Meg the Cat book.
Right.
Yeah. I've completed the script on that, and going to be launching into the artwork here very shortly.
You're going to crowdfund that, right?
Yep.
How big will the book be?
The second one is going to be it's planned for 64 pages total. It's going to be 48 pages of new continuity, and then lots of backstory, behind the scenes stuff.
Are you going to do the same kind of like combination of like art styles with like pencil and ink, and are you coloring it yourself? Are you painting any of it or anything, or?
No, the coloring I leave to the pros on a book like that. I can, and I have done it in the past, but it's better. My time is better spent if I stick to other things. The experimental stuff that I did with the Green Arrow, the Longbow Hunters. Now, a lot of those panels were drawn in pencil on colored paper and hand tinted, hand painted, and I was really experimenting, pushing the envelope as much as possible to see what I could get away with. Maggie the Cat is all done pen and ink.
Right.
Sable is done 90% reproduced from the pencil. And that's something that I started doing back with issue number 19 of Sable. if I had to throw everything away in my studio and keep one tool, it'd be a pencil. That's all there is to it. And today, with the quality of scanners that are available, things you can do digitally, I can pencil a page tight enough that in 10 minutes I can take it from a pencil page to something that looks like it's been inked. And add in certain things in the background that I can't get with pen and ink, but you can do it with pencil. I'm lucky that way. It takes maybe 25 or 30% more time to pencil, but then you save 9-10 hours a page on inks.
Right.
So it's just a phenomenal savings.
When you did like the Longbow Hunters and you were being experimental, were they pretty supportive of that? Like at DC and the editors or the people, or were they like?
Once again,
did they fight you a little?
No, I had Mike Gold firmly in my corner. Mike had left First Comics when he became aware that their business practices were detrimental to the creators, and he went back to DC. And once again, he called me up and basically offered me carte blanche on Green Arrow. Naturally, we had to pass everything through the higher ups in order to get approval, but it was always filtered through Mike, and Mike was great at getting things done. We pushed the envelope as much as possible on that book, and I was taking stories out of the headlines, and there were a few that got some critical pushback, but for some reason, people. I had a reputation there for a while of being a misogynist. Nothing could be further from the truth. I not only have the greatest respect for women, I grew up in a family of 3 boys plus dad and my mom, and mom ruled the roost. There's just no two ways about it. Strong, independent women are really the only kind that I'm interested in. When you meet my wife, you'll understand. Mary is just an amazing gal. The storylines that we did, for instance, there was one that dealt with human trafficking in the sex trade, based on a true story of a girl from Canada who was sold into the sex trade by a biker gang. They shipped her down to Florida, and when she tried to break away, they crucified her, make an example of her. And we did that story. When I wrote it, Mike took it to Dick Giordano, who was creator director at the time. In fact, he had another title. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was basically the boss. And he said, what do you think we ought to do with this? And Dick said, push the envelope. And it helped that Dan Jurgens was the penciler, but Dick was the inker on that.
Oh,
and that one got me one of my favorite reviews of all time. It was mentioned in New York Times and Time Magazine in the same week. Did a feature on comics, and they refer to it as borderline pornography, pandering to the prurient interests of today's youth. Like, you can't buy publicity like that. I mean, that's just fantastic.
We have Mike Gold lined up for an interview.
Yeah.
There you go. He's a great guy, smart as a whip. He's been there and done that. You have to ask him for some of the stories from before he got into comics. Yeah, I've been after this guy to write his memoir for the last 20 years, and he's dragging his feet.
I'll get on his case too.
There you go. There you go. The Chicago days. Yep. The Chicago days are really something. But so we pushed the envelope every chance we got, and made it a point to tackle hard issues that people would ordinarily shy away from. Basically, I don't know. It's if you don't give a damn, they can't hurt you, right?
Right.
And that was kind of our attitude through the whole thing. And I was just phenomenally lucky to have the backing and support of these great people that I've worked with over the years.
Is there somewhere online that you'd like people to hunt you down?
Yeah, you can check out my website, MikeGrell.com. That's an easy one. There is an authorized Mike Grell page on Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but it's administered by Jeff Messer, who is editor of my Masterstroke Studios imprint. And we keep people as up to date as possible on that. And there is a Twitter feed that is similarly administered by my webmaster. So you can check all that stuff out.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, guys. This has been a blast.
Yeah.
And Mike, for God's sake, would you start aging, please?
Yeah.
This guy hasn't changed. Okay, maybe a little gray around the edges. But
it's the hemp. It's the hemp.
It's the hemp.
It's the hemp socks.
It's the hemp socks. It's the hemp socks. Yeah. Yep. I don't understand why I got old and fat and nobody else did. Damn it.
Send them some hemp, Mike.
All right.
There you go.